So we have one more for you, the big lookout, the big future finale, trying to look into the next 10 years, 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, we're going to be here. So, wow, this is it. Yeah. The grand finale. People who are looking into the future. I'm going to hand it over to John from TechCrunch.
Thank you. Test, straight in. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we all? Let's come closer. Just this is a discussion. This is a town hall, a debate. I'm gonna stalk everybody. Come on. All right, so nobody, only you, and then you.
Amal, it's all up to you.
Amal, you get up here.
Amal in the second row.
You want your event to seem that it's full. There you go. Perfect. Sit right there.
You can tell the people outside that only people who are sitting in here get the coupon for the beer.
All right. So I was told to do this yesterday. So I am John Biggs, editor-at-large of TechCrunch. I write about startups. I write about the future. I have a podcast about the future, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I want you guys to introduce yourselves, tell everybody who you are specifically, and then we're going to get into a rollicking and exciting discussion of the future and megatrends.
I'm Josh Rochlin. I am a 4.75 star Uber driver. I work mostly for trips starting in Bergen County. Before that, I was the CEO of Xtify, and we sold that to IBM. And I spend a lot of time now thinking about the gig economy, the Internet of Things, and the future generally.
I'm Aaron Timms. I'm the Director of Content at a predictive analytics startup called Predata. We predict the future in very general terms, especially around big political events, other things that are big macro risks, security events, big financial events as well. And we can talk more about it once we get into the discussion.
Okay, so the mission here is to talk about the future. But first we need to address why you're an Uber driver and why you only have 4.75 stars. What your issue is.
So 3 of my former colleagues at Xtify were my passengers, and they thought it was funny to give me 2 stars each. So that...
So you were ruined by people you know.
Ruined by people I know. I honestly feel like I am working in steerage on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. It is the ability to watch a transformation firsthand, not just read about it in TechCrunch or hear about it on your podcast, but to, on a daily basis, get myself out of bed, into my car, and work this new gig economy. It really is like speed dating. I'm every 15 minutes meeting new people. I'm not shy to talk to them. I have little bottles of water as my excuse to turn around and initiate a conversation. And I'd say about 80 to 85% of the people talk to me throughout their entire trip. I learn. I'm starting a new company called GigStars, and learning about the gig economy is very helpful for me in that sense.
So you basically quit your job as a CEO of a startup, was bought by IBM. You made a lot of money?
I don't have to be driving Uber, let's put it that way.
Okay, all right. So I was worried. I was concerned that maybe you have a cocaine problem.
I might have that also. It's besides the point.
I'm trying to be kind. But the whole thing, does anybody else have tried one of the gig economy things? Nobody else? What'd you do?
I don't know if it really counts as gig economy, but it's.
You will have to start again.
Yeah, and choose what's in your.
Gigster, it's sort of like app development as a service. So I haven't done gigs with them, but I am in their network in theory and like kind of following what's going on the platform.
But nobody's tried to do like the Postmates delivery or anything, right? So we're all supposed to be these futuristic weirdos, but the only guy here who's actually tried some of the futurist weirdo stuff is you.
Well, I also have a store that I've opened on viral styles. So viral styles is like a Teespring. So I can make up my own shirts. Actually, we should get together because during the vice presidential debate, I created a shirt. This is not a political endorsement, but I created a shirt, Pence 2020, because it seemed like that's where we were headed. So Viral Styles is very much like Uber. It's a platform that lets you bring your piece of the work, which is just coming up with a style or a design or a logo, and putting it on their T-shirts. They do the manufacture, the distribution. You need to find your audience. So I think that Viral Styles, Teespring, Uber, it's all the same.
Now, Aaron, I don't want to ignore you, but I want you to tell us the craziest Uber story, and then we're going to go straight into you because you have crazy stuff to talk about too.
My first day, and I thought every day was going to be like that. My first day, I picked up somebody in Pompton Lakes. His name was Kareem, and he and his girlfriend got into my car. They started on the phone with a conversation of whether or not they were going to the VMA Awards or to Los Cabos. And I realized that he was some sort of rap mogul, and I'm musically illiterate, so I couldn't even tell you if he was a manager or whatever. And they got off at the something like the Glenn Miller BMW dealership somewhere in New Jersey. And about an hour later, I hear a phone ringing in the back seat. And the girlfriend left her phone in my car. And it was her calling, saying, my boyfriend will do anything for you to get me back my phone. I said, actually, I'm already on my way to the BMW dealership. She said, no, we're not there. We're in the South Bronx. And I said, okay, I'll get to you. She said, no, really, we're going to give you anything you want. Don't worry. And it turns out, if I was a real Uber driver, there's absolutely nothing worse than having to drive from New Jersey into New York, because New York does not recognize New Jersey drivers. So I go over the bridge into the traffic, and I have no right to pick up anybody. But again, I wasn't doing this for the money, and who knows what was going to be awaiting me when I got to them. So I finally did have a reason to go over the bridge, and I brought her back the phone. And it was in the middle of a regentrifying neighborhood in the South Bronx, and she came out, and her utter disbelief that I really showed up with the phone. She said, you really brought it back? And she handed me $60, which was like, 7 days of net earnings for me in my occasional Uber driving. So that's probably, for better or worse, the most exciting story I've had. It hasn't been what is it, like HBO's Taxi Confidential?
Yeah, no.
I haven't had the twins in the back or anything like that.
There's a lot of loose ends there, but we have to figure that out. All right, Aaron, you're able to predict the president, right? You have data.
I'm not sure we can go quite that far, but we can say something about who's likely to be president.
All right, so I want you to talk about what you guys do specifically. Also talk about the Brexit stuff, the odd way that Brexit was predicted, and this is all going to we have a point here. The way Brexit was predicted and how you're using the same data to predict the current races.
Right. So the whole thesis of what we're doing is that people, that we're living in an age of unreliable polling, that people don't necessarily divulge their true voting intentions when they speak to pollsters, either because they're embarrassed or they want to otherwise misrepresent what they actually feel, or that pollsters aren't getting to people the way that they should be, that, polling methods are unreliable, people don't have landlines, people don't pick up their mobile phones when pollsters ring, or people don't answer online polling surveys the way that pollsters would like them to. So the whole premise of what we're doing is we're going out onto the open internet and scraping metadata from a bunch of well-patronized social media sources like Twitter and YouTube, Wikipedia, Facebook, places like that, and building signals to sort of visualize the volatility in different candidates' political campaigns. And so we did that for Brexit, and we showed consistently through the final month of the campaign that the Leave case was ahead of the Remain case. And we're doing it now again for the US election, and we're seeing some very interesting things, namely that our signals have been ahead of the polls as people have responded to different key events through the campaign. So, for instance, Donald Trump his online support was cratering.
False.
Very nice.
Wrong.
Sorry, wrong.
His online support was cratering in the wake of the fight that he picked with the Khan family after the DNC, then he fired his campaign manager, Paul Manafort. He brought in Kellyanne Conway, Steve Bannon. He stuck to a more sort of scripted, disciplined messaging style. He was reading off a teleprompter. He was doing all these things that are totally against the grain of his personality. And what we saw was that actually started to have a really meaningful impact on the sort of digital receptiveness to his campaign. Then the first debate happened, and his support started dipping, and Hillary Clinton got a huge lift. Then, of course, the Access Hollywood tape came out, and things got even worse for him. So we've seen, actually, in the end, we've ended up seeing something quite similar to what's in the polls. It's just that we've seen it from a different perspective, and we've seen it before it came out in the polls. So it's just interesting to compare, how people demonstrate their interest in politics online versus how that interest is expressed through polls.
So in that specific case, is there a rich enough data set that you're not just getting like what the internet nerds like?
Yeah, absolutely, because we curate and restrict it in a pretty disciplined way. So we only take stuff from the official campaigns. We're not out there, scraping off all the garbage that trolls and alt-right psychopaths are talking about. We're just looking at, what one alt-right psychopath called Donald Trump is talking about. So, so we keep it pretty tight, and we think that the way that we view these sort of trails of digital chatter is representative of what the individual campaigns are putting out themselves, as opposed to sort of what everyone on the internet at large is saying about them.
Okay, so I guess the connective tissue here is that basically you guys are both dealing in messaging. So specifically in terms of in your Uber case, it's a human being asking to be picked up, which is a message in itself. But also in your gig economy case, we could send a message out to anyone in the world and say, hey, we need to do our sidewalk, or we need a babysitter, or we need a dog walker, and that's a interesting type of message, but we could disintermediate we could pull it out of separate companies and just do a separate like open source messaging service that just does that. And then you're looking at data inside that messaging. So what do our feeds look like in 5 years and then 10 years? What does our world look like? And if you wanted to start, Aaron, just to talk about that.
Well, I think our world, in terms of the messages that we transmit and the way that we receive messages from other places, does look pretty different to the way that it is today. Above all, in the way that in the friction between the transmission of messages and their receipt. I think that's going to be a huge component of it. And also in the different data points that people look at to understand how well messages are resonating. In politics, for instance, there's no one has really gone out and tried to understand or quantify digital messaging in a meaningful way. There are sort of very rudimentary metrics that people look at, like the number of followers that a particular account has, or how many Facebook likes a candidate's Facebook page has. But there's no sort of attempt to dig into that in a really granular and sophisticated way. And certainly the whole sort of dimension of understanding digital sentiment and digital messaging is nowhere near as sophisticated as the polling industry is. But I mean, the whole argument here is that polling is not, the whole of a political conversation. More and more of these political contests, more and more of these political debates is happening online. And so we need to come up with a much better way of understanding that dimension.
This morning, my brother requested via Venmo $78 from me for something. I received a notification through the Venmo app. I received a text through my phone number. I received an email. And then upon my paying him, I received an acknowledgement again via all three of the services. It's complicated, it's overwhelming, and it's actually as simple as it's going to be compared to what I think the future holds for us. So there's a huge challenge that I think that everybody in the messaging business, and more broadly, anybody in the consumer engagement business is going to face over the next 5 years. And that's whereas previously we've been able to say, what does the brand want to message to the consumer, everybody is going to have to ask the question of what do we want things to be messaging to the consumer. So we're very used to walking into our car and seeing a dashboard in front of us, and it tells us how much gas is left in the tank. It might tell us miles to empty. As we're driving, it might tell us the speed that we're going at. We're going to get into a world where there's going to be such a proliferation of measurement going on things that companies that make the things, companies that service the things, and we as businesses that are going to deploy the things are going to need to start thinking about what that means from a messaging point of view. Who is going to initiate the messaging that is going to appear on the meters as you're walking down the street in a city? Who is going to measure and send out the messaging that's going to be on your refrigerator, your coffee maker, the light bulbs? And whereas we've had the luxury of having these one-way messaging providers, whether it's a OTT service or a email or SMS service, now there's going to be, I believe, a whole industry that's going to have to come up with solutions to how to actually interact between the consumer and things with a view to the message. And then the message will eventually not simply be one way. It won't just be that your Alexa device, when you say, tell me the news, gives you the news back. When you're going to come down in the morning, there's going to be a sensor on that Alexa device. I should say the Amazon device with the Alexa OS. And it's going to recognize your body type. So it's going to read your calendar to you. It's going to tell you how much gas is left in your car. And it's going to tell you the amount of time you need to set because there is a backup on the George Washington Bridge. We're going to be inundated. And we're going to nonetheless need to solve for that messaging challenge. So when I look at where we're going from a messaging point of view in the next 5 years, I'm concerned that brands aren't spending enough time thinking about, and I'm excited for those of you that are in the messaging business to actually take advantage of this, is how do I capture and then efficiently measure and create a return loop on the messaging. It's really an exciting time, but 3/4 of you that are in the messaging world will be working for other businesses because lots of businesses are not going to be up to that challenge. And the other third of you may be, wooed away to those companies that win at those things. So that's what I see happening. If I can, I realize I've taken a lot of time, but just one other element of this is where I do believe we're going with drones and cars that are either driverless or have otherwise distracted drivers. This afternoon, those of you who were here for lunch noticed that the veranda was open. At some point this morning, there was a delivery truck that pulled up outside and all the sandwiches came up here. The elevator had to be ready. Somebody had to be waiting for the elevator. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? We have open air space here, particularly over that area there. There will be a drone delivery to that veranda there. But how do we know that it's not actually VentureBeat sending their drone up so they can spy on John and all the smart people that he's talking with? Like, how do you know that that drone that's going to land on your Amazon pad in your backyard is actually coming to deliver your Fresh Direct or Amazon Now package and not to spy on you in your pool or take something out of your home? We're going to have a messaging and identification problem and opportunity. And those are the kind of things I get excited about and concerned about, and I hope that some of you are thinking about the next startups to address those issues.
So you're worried about drones coming to spy on you?
On you. I'm
On me
actually a
specifically,
very, very out there, transparent person.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm kind of transparent too, I guess. You can Google me. There's another John Biggs, and he's a mayor of London. He's like a mayor of some council estates or something. And every time he tweets, they tweet to me, and then I pretend that London is Hogwarts, and I just say, like, no muggles. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. Is there a way to centralize and open source that messaging so the drone talks to my phone, talks to my watch, talks to my car, talks to Twitter? Is there any benefit to that? Is that a future you see? Why do you have to scrape YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, some other sites when there could be some centralized way to do it?
Because the marketplace needs competitors, I guess. I mean, you can't reduce everything to a utility, especially when it comes to consumer devices like that. I'm not sure that I agree that in the future there will be a completely frictionless world of messaging where there will be messaging companies that handle all the messages and the messages get seamlessly distributed to the consumers. Because in a world of competition, there will always be individual actors who will want to be in control of the data around the products that they're selling, and the way that they disseminate that to their customers and the way that they exploit it for their own commercial purposes. So, it might, on some level, it might be, an interesting concept to have a kind of messaging utility that unifies, synthesizes messages across all these different platforms and products. But I'm not sure that that could ever happen in a world of commercial competition, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily a desirable thing, because cacophony of voices is good in an open society.
So let me first react to that. Wrong. I
just want to point out Donald Trump did lose the debate last night, so I'm not sure this is a winning tactic for you.
I try to take the best of all people and use that to my advantage. He did lose badly. Hugely, bigly, as he said. But he had so many swatches of land to cover on that. I do think when you take a look at what Nielsen was able to do for a very, very long period of time, and let's forget that Nielsen today does have some competitors, but for a huge amount of time, Nielsen was the messaging record. And whether they got it right or wrong, it was all available, and billions of dollars was expended. So I do think that there will be a movement towards a single point of capture, which will also at times be wrong, but I do think we're getting there. To your question about the messaging system of record and this interconnectivity, this morning I had a 10 a.m. meeting at the World Trade Center. I set my alarm for a time certain and woke up and went about my day and got to my meeting just on time. That is a ridiculous exercise. The cloud knows my calendar. The cloud knows the conditions of the George Washington Bridge and the arrival times of New Jersey Transit. It knows where the MTA trains are up to. We should be at a point where I don't set my alarm for a time certain, but that if there's a backup on the George Washington Bridge, I'm deprived of 10 minutes of sleep, and if there is no traffic in the George Washington Bridge, I'm rewarded with an extra 10 minutes of sleep. I do believe we will get to that point where my coffee is brewed, not when I set it the night before, but 10 minutes before I actually need to get up, because all those things then go in place. So I think we're headed there.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what you guys do. You guys do predictive data analysis. Is that possible with the current state of the art?
To have his coffee ready for him when he gets up in the morning?
Let's extrapolate out.
Not something I'm interested in doing personally, but...
let's extrapolate out from the fact that you're able to look at Twitter and say that Trump is winning,
right,
or that Brexit was going to happen, but nobody believed it, to what we're obviously moving towards, which is sort of a situation where we can tell him that to make his coffee now as opposed to 10 minutes from now.
Right.
That sort of analytics, that sort of deep analytics, can your technology do that? Or is it, I don't want to say is it too specialized, but is there no hope for that sort of thing to happen because it's just too many moving parts?
Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience today have either worked in the startup world, founded companies, or otherwise engaged in a more meaningful way with technology than simply being consumers of it. But putting this stuff together is hard, and you're dealing with a lot of legacy corporate frameworks and power structures, and the people that you're trying to get the information from don't always necessarily want to give it to you, or they want something in return. And there is always this human element of negotiating relationships between different actors, whether they're actual human beings or corporate personalities. So I tend to think it's, you know, it's a great idea, and we will get closer to something like that reality. But this notion of siloed data, I don't think is necessarily going to go away anytime soon. I think there will always be a siloing effect when it comes to data, because controlling data is a sort of very valuable commercial good.
Okay. So when we think of messaging, what do you guys think of when you think of messaging? Is it emails, or what are you guys thinking? Just say stuff. Go on. Voice. Facebook?
Yes.
Yes. All right, good. We got one. Facebook. Anything else? What else we like in messaging? What's messaging to you guys?
What's that? Email.
Email? Like
Notifications.
notifications.
Push.
Okay, so
Which generation?
what's that?
Which generation? My kids don't know that email exists.
His kids don't know emails.
Yeah, so I think we're using this esoteric term messaging, and we're going off into space world here. So I want to bring it round it back down and figure out what we all think of when we think of messaging. So we're thinking about email, we're thinking about push notifications, we're thinking about what your kids are using, WhatsApp or whatever all the hip kids are using. And that means it's mostly humans talking to humans. So as we move into a world where it's humans talking to robots and robots talking to each other, what kind of changes will we have to enact in ourselves to begin to understand that? Because that's going to be, it's even worse than the fire hose of Twitter. You're basically saying your car's telling you got to do this. What's our interface with that in the next 10 years, as opposed to just tweeting on or hanging out on our phones, which we love to do anyway?
Well, I think getting back to messaging, and from the earliest days of when we were working on Xtify, which was a push notification platform, we reduced it down to two things: influence and inform. So businesses wanted to influence a certain intent on the part of their consumers, or they wanted to inform. You know, your bank is telling you that your balance is low or that your check is done. That was push. I think that when we work towards a time where data is this common utility and you can pick things out of this data stream to inform you, the inform piece may be a pull. So I can much more easily today know what my bank account balance is. I can much more easily today set up a if this then that with if it goes below a certain balance. But when it comes to influence, I think that the successful marketers are going to figure out how to break through the noise. And I think that some of the movements we're seeing in Facebook Messenger, for example, will be where marketers succeed. They will take where people are engaged in messaging and build services on it. So I'm not seeing that overturned. I think that you're going to continue to see marketers successfully look for beachheads in that end of the messaging world.
Yes, I agree. On a separate note, to come back to your question, which is sort of what will our interaction with the machines look like in an era where they understand our intentions much better than they do right now, and where sort of they're pushing information to us in a way that presumably makes our life easier. I think the simple answer is problematic, but I'm not sure that we'll ever get to a world where, perhaps we will, where the machines sort of have a mind of their own and they can preempt every human interaction you might want to design. I mean, you see this a little bit in the rise of the bots on in the political sphere. There's been a lot of conversation about this recently because of Donald Trump's reliance on online polls to prove that he's winning debates, and there have been stories published about the effect that bots have had on skewing online polls and on putting spurious sort of messaging out into the Twitter sphere. But the thing that people forget about these bots is that where they do obey a coordinated plan of action, and where they do actually put a unified message out into the digital sphere, that's usually because they have some element of human intentionality behind them. There's a sort of a human design, which is, Trump supporters online organising bot accounts to tweet pro-Trump messaging. So that's kind of an early example, I think, of getting us towards the universe that you have in mind. But I'm not sure that you can ever really get around the human. I think there will always sort of be some intervening element of human curation or human control involved, and that makes the interaction a little more relatable in a way.
Why do you trust that humans are going to be in the picture for so long? What is it in your specific experience? Because you're very pro-human.
I'm human.
Yeah.
I'm talking my own book.
Well, you're also looking at massive amounts of data. I guess from your point of view, you're looking at Twitter data, which is actually human beings. But what does a bot look like in Twitter data that you look at? Is it like visually? What does it look like to you as you move
what does
through?
the account look like? How does the messaging actually differ from
exactly.
a regular human's
And
messaging?
how can you sense that?
I mean, there are certain tells. They usually don't have a human face as an avatar. It's some kind of other random picture of some disembodied thing out in the world. They usually tweet very, very quickly in response to things, so they get the message out faster than humans could, and they just tweet a lot more. I think that's probably the most obvious tell, is that they're doing sort of upwards of 200, 300 tweets a day, and that's not something I could ever manage or want to do. So there are things that give it away, and there's that sort of ineffable element of humanity to communication that is lost when you're looking at a bot tweet. And I think that's probably, apart from all those visual indicators and the frequency of tweeting and so forth, that's probably the thing that gives it away the most, is that it just sounds botty.
And what are you going to do when the robots take over driving?
I'm going to be in my backyard because I sold my company, so I can actually have a Coke. I think that, I talked to some people about this earlier. It used to be that to get from New York to California, about 7 people could fit in a stagecoach. And there would be a driver on top and sometimes a guy with a rifle in the back. So that was 2 to 6. We moved to trains where maybe you needed a conductor, a few people to collect the tickets, and took us a little bit quicker to get from New York to California. We then went to planes, where unless you were on Southwest, there was enough flight attendants to help you along. I think that regardless of where we take technology, and no matter how efficient we make it, each of us will be able to find employment. That doesn't mean that we will have sustainable incomes. It doesn't mean we'll be working 5 days a week, 40 hours, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week. Where I think the excitement should be here is that it doesn't mean we have to work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week. It means that you could make a decision about the flexibility of your work style. I live in northern New Jersey. There is a path of people when they get to about 70 going from northern New Jersey to South Florida. It's a phenomenon. It was a great phenomenon until 2008 happened, where these people found that the income they were relying on all of a sudden dried up. A, because their corpus of their money actually was lower, and B, then because interest rates ran pretty much to zero. Go into a Home Depot and Lowe's in Florida. Hail an Uber in South Florida. Invariably, you're going to get a story about why that 73-year-old person is showing you where there's size 60-watt light bulbs or why they're behind the wheel of that Uber. There is incredible human elasticity. I don't worry for people. We have souls, we have feet and arms, and we're going to keep working for a long time.
Okay, but then we have a million people, and to continue on the car thing. There's the vast majority of adult males between 18 and about 34 are driving. They're driving trucks. They're driving cars. That's millions and millions of people around the world. So we're going from the U.S. to Europe to the Middle East to Africa. All these folks are going to be supplanted by robots. So what do those guys do? Those guys, they can all work at Home Depot. What's the solution? I guess the gig economy is a solution. And how do you?
The gig economy is one solution. There are going to be traffic controllers for drones. There's going to be security companies for drones. There's going to be people in an industry that we haven't even named yet that is going to make up for it. But it doesn't mean, and I think this is where we need to change the math a little bit. And I'm not against having a social safety net with a certain amount of, $10,000, whatever it's going to be. I'm not having that battle now. There is an inherent good to people doing something other than sitting in their backyard. People should be productive. There's more human productivity when humans are being productive. And I think that we're going to find that it could be that we go, as Europe seems to have done almost, de facto, gone from a 5-day work week to a 3.5-day work week. So what? I'd love to spend my time watching Simpsons reruns or whatever else I want to be doing. I don't find a problem with that. I'll tell you something interesting. You asked about interesting Uber stories. This has happened a few times outside my Uber, over a table with my contemporaries. Do I feel bad that I'm taking money from legitimate Uber drivers? Like I'm doing something wrong because I don't have to be driving Uber, then I'm driving Uber. I always find that, just an interesting, challenging question. You never ask a high-paid lawyer, do you feel like you're taking money away from other lawyers? There is, I think, in this country generally, and I think we're seeing it in this election, too much pessimism about the human condition. I think that we are and should remain a very creative and optimistic people. I'm going to get off my soapbox, but...
So I'm the only guy up here who's pro-robot, which is pretty sad.
Oh, by the way, I've seen some TechCrunch stories that sound like they're written by robots, so that may be where
some
you
of
can
mine,
find it.
probably, potentially.
I was going to ask how you feel about that in the context of the disappearing journalism industry.
Oh, absolutely. We're a mess. So I remember, and I don't want to get. This isn't about me. This is about you guys. But I've been realizing now that I single-handedly, and a couple other people, we essentially destroyed the entire tech news industry. The business section in the New York Times used to be a couple pages, then it got really big, then it had its own circuit section. It was really exciting, and then it went away. And that was simply because a bunch of guys like us who were sitting in our basements getting fat said to ourselves, hey, let's just write about Sony really, really quickly. Nobody could beat us. So we basically we shut down every single magazine, shut down a lot of the coverage. We define a lot of the coverage, and I'm not even proud of that fact because there were a lot of good journalists who basically got hit from that. And then once you replace us with robots, then we're really screwed because I'm not doing anything special. Well, I try to, but I'm not doing anything special about when I write that somebody raised $5 million or whatever. A robot could write that fairly easily.
Right, but when you write your trend piece about what that means,
Nobody
that's when
reads
you're doing
it.
something special.
Nobody reads it. All right, how much time do we have? Do we have any? Do you want questions? Do you guys want questions? Do you want some beers? Yeah, go for it.
Trying to create a mobile email application that is going to be email client powered by machine learning and artificial intelligence to automate some of the processes. So my question to both of the participants and to you as well, I guess, it's a three-part question. So role of the email in the future, do you think it has a future, yes or no, and why? And role of the artificial intelligence in your view, because some of the points that you raised were really interesting.
I'll start. I think as long as there isn't a better alternative to email, this is going to be a very sort of weak-sounding answer. email, of course, will continue to have a role. And the sort of strange story of the last 10 years in messaging is the sort of enduring power and influence of email. I think people assumed that with the advent of instant messaging apps and, workplace management tools like Slack and so forth, that email might suddenly become redundant. But if you want to put out a standalone piece of content and send it to a static or slowly changing audience, and you want to target them in a way that you know that they're going to pay attention to what you're saying, email is still a very powerful medium to do that. And I'm not sure that any of the things that have come out over the last couple of years are showing signs that they're in a position to change that. I mean, maybe, in a future universe, you can imagine that people will have things delivered directly to their lock screen somehow, or some other medium might come up through the works that could replace it. But for now, I can't see email being replaced. As for the effect of artificial intelligence on messaging, I sort of go back to rephrase what I said earlier, which is I'm not sure that it might change the way that the message is transmitted, or the sort of the level of friction between the sender and the recipient. But I'm not sure it necessarily changes the actual quality of the communication in a really meaningful way.
I'm dipping into my pocket to get something. But this was it. I got this week in the mail. And in my Facebook feed, the AARP card. I turned 50 on Saturday. Thank you. It made me realize the missed opportunity that AARP in this particular case had. It was, I live in northern New Jersey. I'm sure that I have some sort of economic profile on somebody's server, yet I received the same mailing, the same piece in my Facebook feed that everybody else that I've ever seen repost on Facebook. Hey, I've reached 50. It just brought home to me the fact that I actually don't think that email is going away, but I do think that email needs to be better informed by intelligence. And that we've seen, and I think I heard it in the last session, the curation of influencers and the ability to narrowcast messaging has actually been far more sophisticated in the world of advertising than it has been in direct communications. I see some people shaking their heads. Felix, I think you're agreeing there, or you're just nodding off? Maybe you're agreeing. So I would love to have seen not AARP, here is your discount off of adult diapers, but here's AARP, you've just entered into the 50th year, here's your offer for Crystal Cruise Lines. But that when my 78-year-old mother, she should live and be well, gets her mailings from AARP, she's not up to diapers, but it should be something appropriate there. So I've been struck by how little email has matured over time. So I think that there's an opportunity there. I'm always curious. I've heard so many people that have, the next email app. I've never felt like I need a new email app. Ever since Google started breaking down my promotional emails to my announcements to my regular email, that seems to have done it for me. But I understand some people really find like Inbox and stuff like that really great. I've
been trying to find a good email served client for years. So it's perfect for me. If I can't, because I get thousands of emails a day. Like I have sort of an inbox zero situation where I delete every single email every couple hours, just because I can't use them. But what if you could send an email to a device or a system or something else that could understand it for me? Then I'd be much happier. If I knew that there was a Groupon around the corner, and somebody pinged me or some robot pinged me every couple hours and said, hey, there's a free coffee, you want to go get it? I just got an email about it. So if I don't have to read it, my robot can read it, then I'm a lot happier. As a human-to-human medium, it's maintained simply because it's information rich and it's free. But as a human-to-robot or robot-to-robot medium, we haven't even hit that yet. And that could be the messaging service that I'm dreaming of, where you send an email to my drone and it comes and picks up a package from me, something like that.
It's funny. I think that email search is where there's a lot of opportunity.
This is maybe based on something that Josh said. When I was a kid growing up in the 60s, my father always told me that when I was working age, I'd be flying a helicopter to work and we'd be working 3-day work weeks. And I kind of realized as I got older that people are, in a way, we have the opportunity to work 3-day work weeks, but people get greedy and they want more money. So they'll take the extra 2 days and then they'll get another job. In what you guys are saying, it's almost, it seems like we're working towards a situation we're going to be winding up working 2 jobs for less money because that's the way the economy is kind of playing out. Does that, kind of make sense? With we're all going to be driving Ubers for less money, and is it going to be kind of a
I would tell you, our ancestors worked about 6 jobs. In the morning, they put out the ashes from the fire that they'd had the night before. They went into the forest to forage for breakfast. Later in the day, they grabbed their spears and went hunting for elk or buffalo. They brought it back, and they skinned it, and then they had another job called cooking and another job later on to help get the kids to sleep, and then they went ahead and they procreated and did the same thing the next day. For the smallest amount of historical time, have we had this idea of one job? It's not natural, and I think that we are ripe for a re-evolution back to where our ancestors may have gotten it right.
great.
Yeah, I look forward to going and hunting for elk every day.
Aaron, Josh, thank you very much. Thank you for being so patient.
All right, let's have some elk beers all the way up there.